going to fill the auditorium. So thank you. I didn't want to lose this bet with George. Um, so again, welcome to the auditorium of of IDX. I'm thrilled to be hosting you today as your MC, as this auditorium will dive into two very critical and relevant discussions. But the first discussion will start with focusing on practical applications, how you can deep dive into certain sectors, particularly in applying Orange across value chains or supply chains is what we'll be diving into today. I actually want to start by quoting something one of the panelists said, I believe, in panel 3. Everyone is obsessed with technology and AI, but when you talk about the future of food, the future of the things all of us depend on to be able to exist the next day, the future of food doesn't depend on computers or algorithms or technology. It depends on people. It depends on smallholder farmers and people closest to the ground, growing your foods, building our garment industries, and that is exactly what this panel will be talking about. I'm actually especially thrilled because this panel will be the most geographically diverse panel you have on the day. You won't see a duplicate of the speakers representing the same country. So we will be joined by speakers from Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, and Vietnam. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Oskar from Oxfam, Cambodia. He will be joined by Mr. Kwong from Boston Consulting Group, Ibu Ari Sutanti from Inisiatif Dagang Hijau Indonesia, Mr. Vikash Sinha from MicroSave Consulting, and Dr. Ngoc, founder and CEO of Detech Coffee. Dr. Dao is also joined by Miss Lu Huang, a smallholder farmer with Detech. So I just want everyone to get in the same room as well, that it's not just investors or financiers in the room that are the experts. It is the smallholder farmers, it is the people at the closest to the ground of our supply chain system. So thank you so much, panelists, for flying in all the way from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm honored to have you. Over to you, Oskar.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I know it's after lunch, so we'll try to keep the energy up. I have to plug my organization a little bit. As you know, my name is Oskar. I work for Oxfam. I run a program called the Inclusive Green Economy Program. And basically, a program like this works at the cross-section of agri-value chains, private sector development, climate change, and gender. The way that we work is we work with small-scale producers, building their capacity in terms of agriculture, linking them to small, medium enterprises. Those enterprises then link to global markets. So this is sort of the value chain visual that you can imagine. This is also at the heart of the Orange movement. Around the world, Oxfam and partners like IIX, we're trying to demonstrate that Orange is not just an investment strategy, it's a business model for the future. And it aligns capital, climate, and inclusion to turn value chains into growth, engines of growth, basically. If we look at the sort of context a little bit, consider that less than 0.01% of global climate finance actually reaches women, youth, and minorities. Yet these are the very people that Yasmin mentioned before that hold up our supply chains, basically. So what we really need is sort of a restructuring of how capital flows and who it actually benefits. Again, this is what we think the Orange movement is all about. It builds systems that are gender positive, climate smart, and market driven. So today we have a very esteemed group of panelists here, and we'll hear different perspectives. From corporate strategy and consulting to landscape and systems change, from finance and innovations at the last mile. Finally, really at the enterprise level, leadership showing how impact is driven all the way to the ground level. So that's enough about me. I'm going to pass it on for our panel members to introduce themselves.
First of all, let me say what a privilege it is to be here. I think this Orange Forum is such a purposeful and impactful forum, and definitely very happy to be part of it. I'm Kwong. I'm from the Boston Consulting Group. I primarily work in climate and sustainability, supporting private institutions looking at sustainable supply chains, but also working on governments on various topics such as just transition, net zero pathways, as well as sustainable supply chains. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Sutanti. Currently, I'm Program Director at IDH Sustainable Trade in Indonesia. IDH is a global organization based in Utrecht, the Netherlands, working with private sectors, also with governments, and also CSO and smallholder farmers to make agriculture markets more inclusive. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you to IX and organizers. I think it's a very well organized event. So far, the sessions have been really engaging and quite aligned with what we have been thinking at MicroSave Consulting. So I'm Vikash Sinha. I lead the climate change practice for MicroSave Consulting. And MicroSave Consulting for about 3 decades now has been at the forefront of financial, social, and economic inclusion, working across Asia and Africa, working with banks, financial service providers, governments, regulators, but most of all, communities and smallholder farmers as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, IX, Jasmine, for help us to be here. Me and myself and my coffee lady here. My name is Ngoc. I did my PhD in statistics. However, the family business calls. We want to build an agriculture business, encouraging smallholders in Vietnam adapting to technology as well as sustainability. So I chose coffee instead of rice. I produce coffee from northwest of Vietnam, and I buy cherries and parchment from smallholders, and she's one of the member of that network, and export to the EU, USA, and also in Asia. And I'm so happy to be here and I feel very encouraged because I started my business promoting women because I feel like there hasn't been the focus on the gender equality, and I have the privilege to be promoted and trusted by my family, but I feel that there is not enough opportunity out there for women. So I use my business to do that and help coffee smallholders to evaluate their coffee. Not a lot of them drink their own coffee. They didn't know even how their coffee tastes like. And I'm very proud of what we contributed to the coffee tasting to women, although it sounds very normal, but believe me, it's not easy. And I'm so happy to be here, and looking forward to all of the interaction that we're gonna have. So thank you.
Em xin chào tất cả mọi người. Em là một nữ nông dân đến từ đất nước Việt Nam. Hiện tại em đang là mẹ của 2 con và đang trực tiếp trồng và thu hái cà phê ở Sơn La và thuộc Việt Nam.
I'm coming from Vietnam. I'm a married woman with 2 kids. I produce coffee from Vietnam.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to try to start us off here. When we talk about the orange value chain, how can these be leveraged through inclusive business models and financing to empower women as smallholders? I'll start off with Dr. Dow, actually.
So I started the business, starting with the idea that I wanted to make the coffee special. And when I look at the coffee field, I see a lot of them are women. Actually, basically, the majority of them are women, 90%, or even more than that. So I thought to myself, if I want to make a more resilient business, I need to start with women, meaning I invest in raising their capacity in terms of um, quality assessment as well as farming practices. Um, yeah, so I start with them and invest in training program, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Now over to Joel. Perhaps you can answer the same question for us.
Maybe I take a step back and think about global supply chains, right? This is where I focus on. And actually, it's a very interesting time for global supply chains. Hopefully, everyone can hear me through the mic. Interesting time for global supply chains, and an interesting time for global supply chains in Southeast Asia, right? With how global geopolitics is shifting, US-China trade relations. Southeast Asia is now a very interesting place for supply chain, record FDIs, and really what we do in terms of sustainable, inclusive supply chains in Southeast Asia will have an outsized impact, right? So we start with that macro context. I think a few interesting developments as well. One, I think we are seeing for the first time regulations with teeth on in sustainable supply chains globally. We have, for example, through the EU CS Treaty, yeah, and they are looking at, for example, factoring in human rights, factoring in environmental consideration into exports. And for the first time, it's punitive, right? For example, if companies are unable to comply, they face fines of up more than 5% of their global turnover. So that's significant. And I think that's the first time that we're seeing it. We see carbon tax coming in through carbon border adjustment mechanisms as well. So there's real regulation which is evolving here. And yes, it's still largely focused on carbon, largely focused on human rights, but I do see a path for that evolving over time, right? And that's really important signal on the importance of sustainable supply chains. I think third, we also see consumer expectations really changing. For certain areas in agro-commodities such as coffee, palm, cocoa, it's table stakes, right? So looking at community involvement, looking at inclusive supply chains, this is becoming increasingly important and becoming almost critical to right to operate. And finally, I know it was mentioned before about technology. Yes, there needs to be, that's not the cure-all, but also we are seeing developments in technology which reduces the cost of traceability in the supply chain. So how do we make it less costly to trace sustainable, inclusive supply chains? That's also a key evolution.
Right. Thank you, Joel. For the same question, I'll go over to Ari.
Okay, I think I'll follow up what Joel mentioned because IDH, I mean, my organization is an organization that is trying to transform the market and also into more sustainable and inclusive. And I think it is now, it's not a compliance anymore, but I think it is, the world is working towards that pathway, as Joel mentioned. Like all the premium markets, the EU and also other countries are also are requiring products that are deforestation free, and almost all products that we consume every day are either produced in the surrounding of forests or near the borderline of forest, or some might affect the forest. So it is very urgent now that we are at the same time protecting the environment, but also make sure that the economy is growing and the inclusion is there. So I think that fits with as an organization, IDH is working towards the theory of change, better environment, better income, and also inclusions. And how we are achieve that is through what the framework that is called the protections, productions, and inclusions. We are achieving the deforestation-free supply chain, working with private sectors like all the like many downstream company and brands. You name it, like the products that we consume every day, because I think most of the products that we consume every day, like toothpaste, chocolate, you know, everything is related to either cacao or palm oil, and everything that is produced by smallholder farmers. 40% of Indonesian productions of palm oil, and also I think more than 30% of cacao are produced by smallholder farmers, and smallholder farmers are those at the last miles. Like more than 30% of them are women, and also people who are living, like in indigenous lands. So working with the, we are working with the private sectors, also working with the government, and also with farmers. And I think using the what we call our globally, like this approach called as the landscape approach, in which we are working in the landscape and trying to work with everyone at the landscape, be it government, be it indigenous communities, farmers, and also companies sourcing from that area. And we have to agree on, how we can still produce and make the productions better, but at the same time also protecting the forest. So in practical, what do we do? And I think this is the practice that are also trying to be done by several other organizations who are also conveners like us. It's working directly with all those stakeholders and agreed that we have to do the protections of the forest, not deforesting, not producing a product that is, exploiting the forest. And the second is to work together. In our case, we do co-financing with private sectors to support and provide farmers with not only training but included into the supply chain. This is very important, not only for the farmers for the sake of inclusions, but also for the supply chain's resilience, because there is no supply chain's resilience without farmers included there. Again, like product like cacao is very heavily attended by farmers. It's not a commodities that can grow by itself. So it needs farmers to do like intensive, intensive care to the cacao plants. Not so much with small palm oil, but cacao is definitely. And 40% of Indonesia productions comes from them. So providing them with the good agricultural practices will give them capabilities to have better productions and increase their productions. And this is proven through our impact evaluations. And I'm sure other organizations that are supporting this initiative are also working towards that directions. At the same time, working on the good agricultural practices automatically will not be encroaching to the forest. So I think that is the connections between inclusion. When we do inclusion to farmers, providing them with the best capability that they can, at the same time providing or rather advocating to the government that they should get the fundamental rights like land tenure. It helps them gaining access to finance, because once you have as farmers, when you have your land certificated, then you are seen in front of government, in front of banks and financial institutions, and it helps opening your access to finance, access to inputs, fertilizers, access to replanting, and it's in itself, it gives you access to have better income for farmers. That in the end, like when farmers has a better income, why should they do the encroachment? You can accept do intensifications in your land. I think that is something related to the supply chain that was mentioned earlier.
Thanks, Ari. Listening to you, I'm very confident the time for orange value chains is here. For the same question, just as a reminder, when we talk about orange value chains, how can these be leveraged through inclusive business models, financing to empower women and smallholders? I'll pass it on to Vikash.
Thank you. So I'll just talk about three things coming in from the experiences of MicroSave of about 3 decades, which is actually the inclusivity is not just a development imperative, but it's a huge economic opportunities as well, and I'll expand on that. Second is where it will not happen on its own. It has to happen through design, and a lot of actors have to come together to do that. And the third is inclusivity doesn't stop at national borders or provincial borders. It has to go beyond that when we look at global supply chains. So on the first one, I mean, if you look at around 3 to 4 decades back, the rural community, the smallholders were thought to be unbankable. Formal financial services were not available to them. Now, if you look at least $1.5 trillion are actually deployed by financial service providers working with these smallholders and rural folks where they are actually successfully running businesses. Their repayment rates are amazing. In most parts of the world, actually it has led to financial inclusion, empowerment, agency, and also a sense of actually believing in the livelihoods that they pursue. Secondly, when I say that it will not happen by on its own, it has to happen through design. And Joel mentioned about a few regulations, punitive actions being introduced, but a lot of it has to be done through the active stakeholders, which means the businesses, the policymakers. If we only look at regulations, that may not be enough because without inclusivity, the value chains or business models are not going to be resilient any which way, right? So if you look at any value chain or any chain, for example, the resilience of it is going to be defined by its weakest link. If you leave that link weak, this is going to have repercussions on the entire value chain or business model. And we saw that during the COVID crisis, right? Concentration of productions or supply chains or innovations or financing led to huge challenges throughout the world, right? And the last point that I wanted to mention was that national borders, generally we see that actually the world order, which was pre-existing, dominated by global north. Now, I mean, if it comes to global south, whether it's going to solve some of these challenges associated with inclusivity, it will not automatically unless within the national borders also we look at vulnerabilities and groups which have been historically disadvantaged and make designs to include them in the design process. So yeah, I'll just stop there.
Thanks, Vikash. It's a great way to sort of point out how inclusion has led to sort of mobilizing a large amount of capital that you mentioned. So now, going over to Joel. Joel, you advise major corporates on supply chain transformation. For many for many of these corporates, inclusion is something that sits at the compliance column, something that they report on. What do you think it will take for corporates to see inclusion as a driver for competitiveness and also for value creation?
That's a good question. I think maybe first to start off, it's worth saying that the narrative has shifted quite a bit, right? So, previously people look at profit at the bottom line, but we now talk about the language of a triple bottom line, right? Of people, planet, and profit, right? So that's been a key shift, and that's also a sign of progress. I think second is, what we are seeing is real advantage from sustainability, right? If you look at how capitals and investors are moving, about 85% of asset owners now have sustainable investing policies. We see that sustainable companies reporting on ESG on a regular basis and showing progress have 20 to 50% basis points lower cost of capital. So it's reducing the cost of finance. We look at sustainability-linked finance, and that's close to 2 trillion. Right? And these are just numbers, but really that's through the capital markets, really rewarding sustainability beyond compliance. Right? I think that's a key shift. I think the third, we will see, and eventually we'll see, is that more awareness of the business case for inclusion. Right? So there are tremendous tons of reports out there looking at when we think about inclusion, how that expands talent pools, how that companies with diversity at the board level tend to perform better on the overall TSR performance, and even at the farm level or at the shop floor level, right? When you have inclusion and diversity, it leads to better outcomes, whether in agroforestry, whether in agriculture outcomes, and so on and so forth. So I think the increased awareness of the economic value of inclusion is definitely important. And the more awareness there is, the more there will be investments into the area, and people can see it as benefits beyond compliance.
Joel, that's really positive, really great to hear. Arby, you mentioned a lot about the multi-stakeholder approach that you take via IDH. Maybe you could share with us how do we ensure that women and smallholders share in the value that's been created through the IDH multi-stakeholder approach?
Yeah, I think I'll put it this way. I think it is very important to have all women and also all marginalized group into the supply chain, because I think all the commodities, for example, that is traded now globally, they are the market will require the NDPE. I think, Joel, you're very familiar with this, right? The no NDPE, no deforestation, no pit, and no exploitation. No exploitations to women, to labor, to children, to indigenous people. That is one thing. Another compliance is the UDR and the UCSSD that Joel mentioned earlier. So it is imperative now for all companies, big companies like even companies like Unilever, PepsiCo, and all those big brands. They are reporting, very thoroughly on all the those regulations, and also there is this consumer consciousness, right? That we want to buy product that is not, making the orangutan lives, displays, for example. So now when you are trading coffee or trading cacao, it's not only like a cacao or coffee, but then is it deforestation free? Is it organic? Is it low carbon, product? So that is something that consumers would like to purchase. This that is the conditions for all the stakeholders, for government to ensure that compliance is there. Not only Indonesian government, but the EU government, all the big countries government, also developing countries government, also downstream company, also traders, also smallholder farmers, and also investment and investors, because banks are not funding companies that are doing deforestations, for example, or human rights exploitations.
I'm so sorry, panelists. I've been urged to kind of keep to a time. I've just been trying to make sure everyone has time to speak, of course. Maybe I might want to forward a closing question that we got online. So maybe, of course, Mr. Vikash, Dr. Dao, and Ms. Lu, you haven't spoken, so maybe I'll direct the closing question to them. But building on also, I remember, Ba'ara, you told me that there's a slogan that IDH uses, which is better environment, better income, better inclusion. And you see that in your work across Indonesia. So Dr. Ngoc, maybe tell us whether that better environment, better inclusion, better income is also a pattern you see when you're working with smallholder farmers of Vietnam. And for Ms. Lu Huang, I want to know, as the on-ground expert here, what decisions do you feel farmers should have more influence over? And I think everyone in the room should take note of that answer later. Thank you. And of course, Mr. Vikash, any closing remarks from you?
Yeah, I would.
Thank you. Em xin trả lời cái câu hỏi đó là nếu là một người phụ nữ nông dân trực tiếp trồng và sản xuất cây cà phê ở Việt Nam thì em cũng mong muốn có một cái tiếng nói, đó là về cái giá cả của thị trường. Muốn cái tổ chức hoặc đoàn thể nào đấy hỗ trợ cho chúng em ở những cái năm liên miên, ví dụ như 2-3 năm mất mùa chẳng hạn, sẽ cho chúng em bù vào những cái khoản thua lỗ mà bọn em đầu tư ở cái vườn cà phê nhà bọn em. Còn với những năm 2-3 năm hiện tại thì bọn em cũng đang rất là hài lòng. Còn nữa đó là cái vấn đề cái bên EU và cái chứng chỉ bền vững ấy, thì là một người nông dân trực tiếp thì bọn em cũng muốn đóng góp ý kiến để xây dựng cái áp dụng vào cái thực tế để cái biến đổi khí hậu ấy không ảnh hưởng đến bọn em quá nhiều. Bọn em cũng mong muốn ở cái thời điểm hiện tại là được đóng góp ý kiến vào cái chứng chỉ đấy, bởi vì một số cái nó xa vời với thực tế, bọn em chưa tiếp nhận được. Còn một cái thực tế nữa đó là ảnh hưởng trực tiếp đến phụ nữ bọn em, đó là phụ nữ bọn em là trực tiếp trên nương trên dãy và có cái quá trình sinh nở ở một cái thời điểm mà vào mùa vụ là không có thu nhập, mất sức khỏe và chúng em vừa mất thời gian vừa mất tiền, nên là cũng mong có những cái quỹ hỗ trợ trực tiếp đến phụ nữ nông dân như chúng em để chúng em được hưởng cái chế độ như các chị làm văn phòng hoặc là công ty để có thu nhập để trang trải cho những cuộc sống ạ. Xin hết ạ.
Thank you.
I would like to translate three main points here.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah. So for the years that the coffee price is so low, it's depressing. And I had to take the losses several years in a row. I would love to have to be a part of a price definition conversation,
Yes.
because that is very difficult to take for a family. Now I'm very happy because in the last 3 years the coffee price is good, but how long it's gonna go I don't know. But for several years in a row it was very tough for the family. That's one main point. The other is that the UDR and many sustainability regulations are made in a boardroom, and there are applications which are difficult to achieve on the field, as well as we lack knowledge of how to make it happen. And I would like to be also in that conversation.
Yes.
That when what sustainability means and inclusion means. And the other thing is I am a mother and gave birth to 2 children, all in main coffee harvesting time. And I had to pay for workers to replace me, and I don't have mother leave or any compensations. And so I give birth, but I have to make losses because I have to pay for someone who instead of me do the job. And I don't have any compensation at all, social backbone or anything. And I would like to be in conversation of how female farmer can be supported during those times.
Maybe a round of applause for Diane. Maybe Mr. Vikash, I'll let you make closing remarks before we have to wrap up.
I'll be very quick. So I mean, we understand the question better. How can inclusivity will have a positive impact on environment and incomes, right? And the answer is quite logical. I mean, if you look at, if you're talking about inclusivity, we are looking at numbers. So people who had not been part of the economic activities, if they are included, obviously this is going to not only going to actually increase the amount of economic activity, but will also increase income levels from the existing then if you look at why it would have a positive impact on environment, we don't understand the amount of dependence that we have on nature and the natural ecosystems on global supply chains. So the moment you include inclusivity and environmental sustainability, it's going to actually lead to having a long-term and resilient supply chain. So that's again a no-brainer. And both of these actually is going to lead to, increase in income. So our examples from India where inclusion of women in different platforms has not only led to actually creating these systems, but also has led us to discover new challenges, which allowed us to discover new opportunities. So these challenges led to innovations, which resulted in actually increase in income. Thank you.
Maybe join me in thanking all of our brilliant supply chain panel. Thank you so much everyone for joining. And I think the insight from Ms. Lu Kwong was important. She's talking about there are labor laws, ESG regulations that determine whether as a farmer you get premiums. But no one's asking the farmer whether this is what they define as sustainable practices. So thank you for reminding that in this room to Detech Coffee and the team. Thank you so much. And I invite you to return to your seats now. Thank you. Before we move to our next session, a quick note that the main hall is now hosting a panel on gender empowered and climate resilient infrastructure. So if you're interested in another sector application of Orange, that's where that session will be. But for those staying in this auditorium, we're going to get a lot more technical. Maybe I'll let you do some quick transitions.